Are you a woman in the corporate world, striving to break barriers, challenge unconscious bias, and lead the way for women in leadership roles globally? If so, this is the podcast for you. Introducing Leading Ladies Who Lunch. The lunch hour is usually the time when colleagues get together for real, honest conversations about work, life, and everything in between. In each episode of Leading Ladies Who Lunch, we'll delve into insightful discussions and share actionable strategies to help you navigate corporate life. Co-hosted by me, Cece George, a leadership development architect and inspirational speaker. I'm thrilled to share my experience and expertise on leadership, mentorship, and organizational intelligence to help you own your career.
And me, Rachel Lowndes, CEO and founder, imposter syndrome expert and mindset coach at Rachel Lowndes Coaching and Consulting. Passionate about helping women conquer imposter syndrome and unleash their inner confidence to get the recognition and promotions they deserve.
Jam-packed with insightful conversations, expert advice, and inspiring stories from a diverse group, we'll explore how to overcome obstacles, shatter those glass ceilings, and build unshakable mindsets to unlock your true potential. So whether you're sipping a coffee or enjoying a meal at your desk, tune in for a no-host bar lunchtime chat. Episodes will be dropped every 2 weeks. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button.
Leading Ladies Who Lunch, empowering women, one conversation at a time. Welcome back to the Leading Ladies Who Lunch podcast. Now, this year we made a decision to have more guests on, and more specifically, more male guests to add more diversity and perspective to the conversation. So this week, we are delighted to be joined by the head coach of Australian NRL team, that's National Rugby League for our American listeners, the Manly Sea Eagles, Anthony Seibold. So Anthony is a seasoned professional in the world of rugby league, renowned for his expertise as a coach, strategist, and mentor. With a career spanning over 2 decades, Anthony has worked with some of the most elite teams and players in the sport, earning a reputation for his innovative approach to coaching and player development. A former professional league player himself, Anthony seamlessly transitioned into coaching, where he achieved notable success, including being named NRL Coach of the Year in 2018. His leadership roles have included head coaching positions at the Manly Sea Eagles, South Sydney Rabbitohs, and Brisbane Broncos, as well as assistant coaching roles for the Queensland State of Origin team and England Rugby Union team. Anthony's passion for continuous learning has led him to pursue academic excellence, holding a master's degree in educational leadership, which he integrates into his coaching philosophy. Known for his dedication to fostering strong team cultures and empowering individuals both on and off the field, Anthony remains a sought-after voice in the business and sporting communities. Wow, Anthony, that intro is spectacular. Welcome to the show. We're very excited to have you on here with us today.
Yeah, no, it's always good to chat. Thanks for having us on, Rachel.
Oh, no problem.
Anthony, welcome to the show. I know this is the first time that you and I are meeting, and I'm just really so excited for the conversation. And man, your bio is really impressive.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, probably not that impressive to Americans, but yeah, no, it's the rugby clubs out here have had a lot of experience. Yeah,
it certainly is impressive. So, Anthony, you have had quite the career, and I think it's very easy for people to pigeonhole footballers, dumb idiots with no education or intelligence. But quite the opposite is true. And in your case, you have had quite a lot of experience and knowledge in the leadership space. So, from your experience as a coach and from what you have learned, what do you think makes a great leader?
I think there's probably a couple of things. The first one is reliability. I think you need to have, people will follow someone who's reliable and they're consistent, day to day, week to week. They're not sort of fluctuating, by being a 7, 8 out of 10 performer and then being a 2 or 3 out of 10 performer. They're very consistent. And then the second thing I think is curiosity. Like you spoke about education and so on. I think the best leaders I've worked with in both business and in sport have a real genuine curiosity to get better. Like to go and do professional development, personal development, etc. And I think the third thing is having sort of that. I suppose for want of a better word, that empathy for others, understanding that not everyone's like you, and that, there is diversity in your organisation or environment. So, having an understanding of what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for the other. So I think they're three things that I've sort of lived by. And, to answer your question, that's something that's developed over time too, like what's really important, rather than sort of I talk about, chasing 5 rabbits you get. No, I think, those 2 or 3 things are really important to me.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I think curiosity is really important. Like continued learning, like understanding what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know, and so you have to kind of keep growing. And that empathy for others, that was one thing I really had to learn, was not everyone thinks like me. So I really have to, and that's a massive eye opener, I think, when you become a leader.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, I sort of like, you'd understand, right? So just to put some context to the listeners, I've got 40 players in my group, and they're from all walks of life, from multiple cultures, from Fijian to Samoan to Cook Islander to Tongan to New Zealand Maori players to Indigenous players to players born in the UK. We've even got people of Serbian and Croatian descent as well, and I've got a German background. Like my granddad, my last name is German. So we've got this mix of cultures, and that's one of the exciting things about being a leader in a team, particularly in sport. There's that diversity of culture, but we're all going for the one common cause, and you sort of see that in business as well. Whatever the common cause is in the business, most of the time it's about trying to make money, but there's still a common cause. And so what we try and do is, everyone's got an individual purpose, but how do we sort of tie that to a team context and really go after putting yourself, to perform for that particular team in my environment.
Yeah. That's amazing. I love that you spoke about the empathy piece, just like Rachel was saying earlier. That's something that in more recent years, there's really been a shift in the mindset. I think long is gone where we look at leaders as this authoritative personality that is all-knowing, all-becoming, all-powerful. And we're really looking at it from a humanistic perspective. And that's why empathy in the workplace is so important. And to that end, just like, with a workplace, I imagine having a cohesive team where everyone is trusted, is supported, and, that's all that are really critical components to the team's success. So can you talk us through some strategies that you've used to build a high-performing and cohesive team?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll start with the staff that work around me. One of the things I've tried to do is just have diversity in my staff. I think one of the mistakes I made when I was a young leader was, if someone wasn't like me, and I've got a bit of OCD, and I'm structured with my planning and structured with my day and so on, probably really high work ethic, less creative type. I wanted everyone to be like me, right? But then think about what that does to the team. It's just like 5, 6, 7, 8 coaches who are all like, myself. And that doesnn't work. So one of the things I've grown to learn is you need diversity in your coaching group, in my coaching group. So we've got people who are really creatives and probably not that organised, and we've got guys who are of Pacific Islander descent who understand culturally, a bulk of our team way better than I do, because they grew up in that culture and understand what's important to that culture. So there's just some examples. So essentially, I try and fill the gaps, all right, as a leader in my environment. Then second to that is collaboration is key. And I didn't say that as a leader, but I think you spoke about that authoritative approach of a leader in the past. Like when I grew up, I'm 50 now, but when I grew up, when I played professional sport, the coach was the dictator. Or the teacher or the principal were the dictators, and there was no collaboration. It was my way is the only way, and if you're not doing it, then see you later on. There's a real collaborative approach to our staff here, and also our senior players. We've got 4 senior players who are our leaders in our environment. So 4 of our 40 players not only elite players, but they're real genuine leaders by their reliability and their actions and what they do around here. And so I collaborate a lot with them. I'll share an idea with our staff, or share an idea with our 4 senior players. And and they can often make my idea better, right? I always think about the 80-20 rule. So I should come to our staff or our senior players with 80% of the idea in concrete, right? But can they add 20%? That's the challenge to our leaders and our other staff in my environment, because I want collaboration. If they can make my idea better, then I'm all for it. And so they're two of the things that I think a lot about. And I think the third thing is, you need to make a psychological safe environment. Now, psychological safety is this real buzzword at the moment, but I reckon you get a feel for psychological safety if you come into a team meeting room here and it's dead quiet, right? If you come in for a day, ladies, and you come into our team meeting room and it's dead quiet, I reckon that sort of says, oh, this is not a real safe environment, because they're a bit worried about the principal, coming in, or the head coach coming in. But if you come into an environment, there's lots of chatter before the meeting, they're sort of having a laugh, talking to each other. You can sort of there's a sense of that sort of safety in that environment. And so I really try and observe that when I go and do professional development in business organisations or other sporting codes. And it's just a real little indicator, but it's something that we really try to drive. And you might sort of say, well, how do you do that? Well, we do lots of turn and talks, okay, so this is the idea, turn and talk to your mate, you got 2 minutes, come up with a better idea, as an example, rather than just say, okay, Rachel, you tell me what the answer is to this question. If you get it wrong, or, I'm a bit embarrassed. It's just really trying to collaborate within our meetings as much as possible.
Yeah, and that gives people, a sense of responsibility. They feel like they're part of, the very nature of being part of a team is that you work together, right? And if you've got, like, as you say, that traditional kind of sense of, this is the gaffer. I don't know if you use that terminology.
No, they use it in England soccer.
Yeah, I know that they use that in England Premier, because I used to work at Chelsea Football Club.
Yeah.
And obviously, like the gaffer was the man who said, this is how it goes, this is what you do, and nobody argues with you. Now, I do understand that, because a lot of athletes are young, right? They're young men, and they do need structure. They do need that routine. They do need something to help them actually structure their day and know what to do. They need that guidance, but also we need to give them a bit of responsibility as well, and so that they can become leaders themselves. So you've got quite a diverse team, as you mentioned before there, with all the Tongans, Samoans, Cook Island, Maoris,
which is great. That is one of the things I love about our club and our team, because there is so much diversity, Rachel, and we want them. So we have a 4-person leadership group of players, and then we have a 4-person social group, right? Or social committee. And they're the guys who are the glue and who try and connect the group away from footy. And but that's one of the things I love about the diversity,
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask, with such a diverse team, what kind of challenges do you find with that? And how do you get around those challenges?
Yeah, well, one of the things is trying to get a better understanding myself for the cultural considerations of different players. And so whether it's something like faith, so Sunday's really important for many of our group who have strong faith and who put faith first. And we don't want them to not be able to practice their faith. So something as simple as, we never have training sessions on a Sunday, never. At times we have to play on a Sunday, and that's part of our roles, but I don't ever put training sessions on a Sunday. And because of the fact that faith's really important. And if we don't have a game that day, I want them to be able to go to church with their elders or their families, or, whoever it is that's important to them. So that's one cultural consideration. We've had things like, cultural food nights. So we've had a Tongan, I don't actually think they call it hangi. I just can't, uma, I think it is, but essentially the Tongan version of a hangi, which is what the New Zealanders would call it. And I think it's an uma, but I could be mistaken.
Like ceremony, isn't it? Yeah.
It's a ceremony, but it's almost like cooking in the ground, using the ground and the heat and the coals. So we've done things like that just to celebrate other cultures. Getting the Samoan community, bring their food in, getting the English heritage community to bring their food in and cook a barbecue and so on. Things like that, you need to celebrate those little things. The other thing is, really coolly, we on our lockers, the players' lockers, and you can't see it behind me here, but on our players' lockers, they're the flags of their heritage. right? So if you've got Indigenous heritage, you've got an Australian flag and an Indigenous flag. If you've got if you're an Australian or born in Australia, like the Trebojevic brothers, but they're of Serbian and Croatian descent, they've got all three flags on their locker. If you're from Fiji, you've got the Fijian flag on your locker. So little things like that celebrate the diversity of culture. So they're all little things. There's no big thing in isolation. They're all little things that you need to drip feed into the environment, and that's one thing that we try and do. And for me, it's about getting a better understanding. Many of our guys live in extended families, so there could be up to 12 people living in a family. And having an understanding around things like sleep and recovery and potentially what home life is like, just for me to get a better understanding, and that's one thing I've learned over the journey.
Yeah, that's
That's
great. That gives
amazing.
them a real sense of belonging, I suppose, and that's super important when you've got young men from those types of cultures where quite often the financial burden is on them to provide for the family as well. That's something that isn't really highlighted that much, is it, in the sport?
Yeah, and that certainly is a consideration, because for many that's the reality that you provide for your extended family, and so for me, just getting a better understanding of what that looks like on a daily or weekly or monthly level has been important. And yeah, as I said, it's all about learning, but filling the gaps in with we have a coach of Tongan descent on our staff. Now he's a brilliant coach, and he's here, but part of the reason why I particularly wanted to recruit him is because he's not only his coaching ability and his experience as a coach, but his cultural understanding of the guys who grew up in Tongan or Samoan families.
Yeah, yeah.
Amazing. Something that had just occurred was, and I don't know how prevalent this would be, in your field of work, but mental health has really become a forefront in the topics that we talk about, things we experience, especially since COVID. There's really been an emphasis to, monitor your mental state of health. Organizations are implementing so many different programs around work-life balance and supporting your mental health. So to that end, given everything you talked about the benefits of having such a diverse team. You've spoken about some challenges and things you've had to work around and just be considerate of. But how do you support your players' mental health, and how do you think the environment that you're fostering supports your team, your players' mental health?
Yeah, so to start with, trying to create that psychological safety in our environment. It's okay to make mistakes, right? And not get the answer right at meetings, and not putting people on show. It's okay to make an error at training. We're not perfect, right? But it's about learning from those imperfections or those moments, right? That's the first thing. I think the second thing is in and around you talk about you talk around the staff that we put around the group. So we have two wellbeing and education people who work in our environment, and so things like day off. Like I'm in the office. It's a day off for the players. And there's a group of 8 players doing a course down the other end of the building, facilitated by our wellbeing and education officers. So there's opportunities for them to do stuff outside of just playing rugby league here in Australia. They can actually study. They can do apprenticeships. One of our guys is in today working as a stockbroker in the city of Sydney. So we want that. We encourage that, because we don't want their identity just attached to being a rugby league player, professional rugby league player. And many young people do, right? So when that's not going well, they've got nothing to lean on, which impacts their mental health. So doing something away, whether it's study, traineeship, apprenticeship on our days off, to that point, we give a yearly schedule. So if you want to study, do an apprenticeship, work as a stockbroker because you've completed your studies, etc., we have a full year plan. So they know exactly what the one day is each week that we have off. And I think not only for education, but for partners to know, hey, you know what, that's the day that my husband and myself can go for breakfast, or that's the day that my partner can drop off the kids to school and pick the kids up. So just giving some certainty and some clarity, and that doesn't change. So that helps a lot. The third thing is we have a mental skills coach, and his name's Andrew May, who's very well regarded here in Australian sport and Australian business. He works with a lot of the top CEOs of the business world, and also he's had a lot of roles across multiple sports here in Australia, and so we give the players access to that. The NRL provide for the entire competition personal and financial services for addiction, for partner counselling, etc. So look, when I played professionally in 1998, which is a lifetime ago, there was none of this. Right, it was pretty much sink or swim. It was pretty much the coach was the dictator. Pretty much there was a lot of hazing or bullying as you went into an environment, and if you were a younger person, you were seen, not heard. It wasn't a psychological safe environment. If you studied or wanted to better yourself in some ways, you were isolated. So there's all these different things occurring. It is just like, it's almost like a full 360. And, you know, the amount of support that we give the players, and the Rugby League Players Association even provide further support. So, look, I don't think the game here in Australia has done it any better. Is there still areas to work on? Yeah, of course there is, but I just think it's light years in front of when I was a young guy coming through a couple of different organisations back in the 90s, and you know, the young people are much better equipped as far as you know, being able to seek advice, seek support, etc. Than at any other time in professional sport history here in Australia.
Yeah, that's
Right.
fantastic.
Well, all of that is worth celebrating. Those are all notable accomplishments. And I think, you know, it's good to celebrate all of those ways that you support your players, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to move forward, is to continue to build on that. And I'm sure your players are appreciative of all those efforts.
Well,
Sorry,
I think one of the things is we want them to feel supported. Now, I believe if their whole identity is not attached to being a professional rugby league player, they've got other things in life that are really important to them. Look, of course, rugby league is important, but I often say this to players: get away from footy for the next 24 hours. You know, get away mentally, get away, you know, go and do your study, or spend the day with your partner or the kids, or whatever it is, you know, whatever stage in life, because we've got guys from 18 in our locker room all the way up to 36 is our oldest. So we've got this massive big age gap, and you've got people who are late 20s, early 30s, married with kids, and you've got young guys who are straight out of school who are single, and you've got all guys in between there, you know. So what they do on their time off is different, but we want it to be productive and constructive, and we want to support that. I don't want them thinking footy 24/7, because there's a mental burnout, and if footy's not going well, then that's when the mental health starts to deteriorate, in my experience.
Yeah, it's so important, because, you know, that identity piece, and you would have probably experienced this yourself, Anthony. It's like, if footy is your life 100% 24/7, and then, you know, you leave football, which inevitably you're going to retire, then your whole identity has been tied up in football. Who are you when you leave? You know, what are you about? And that can be a real problem for retiring footballers, as you probably have experienced yourself and have seen, right? So what you're doing there is really important work around that. What do you do outside of football? How can you build yourself as a person around football and outside of football? So yeah, that's really great stuff.
Right. And actually,
it's
you're
really
setting up your players for success later on. So that's, you know, something to really be noteworthy of.
Yeah, I think it's really important, because the biggest thing we've seen, and like I read some statistics around American sports, you know, there's a very high statistic of NFL players, once they retire, going bankrupt within the first 7 years. You know, and again, the actual statistic escapes me, but you know, our players don't earn anywhere near the amount of money that they earn. But like, our top earners are earning well over $1 million here in Australia, which is significant, right? And even our lowest earners are in the hundreds of thousands, again, which is well above, you know, the average wage of an Australian citizen. So when they transition to post-career, for many of them, their earning capacity is deteriorates unless they start to prepare for life after football as a younger person. And I think not only does it help with their mental health, it helps set them up for that transition, because a lot of the guys will say, you know, 1 minute I'm really important, I'm on the back page of the paper, I'm on, you know, the lead story on the evening, you know, sports bulletin on the news, and then the next day they feel like nobody. So you know, it's really interesting, but it's a space that I feel like in Australian sport, it's as good as it's ever been with regards to trying to support that journey.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, it is very important, as you know, you're in the public eye as well. You really need to have like an identity outside of football. You need to be supported. Your mental health needs to be supported. And like you know, with yourself, like as with anyone in life, you've had your fair share of ups
Yeah.
and downs, right? And some of those have been played out publicly. So what is the biggest lesson you have learned from your coaching career, and how could our listeners take some of those lessons and apply them to their lives too?
Yeah, you're right. You know, a lot of my struggles as a professional coach have been played out in the public domain, and yeah, that was really challenging because of it being so public. And so, yeah, look, one of the things I've tried to do is really, really drive that understanding that it's all in perspective. Like the reality of it is, it's professional sport, but it's not life and death, right? So, I know this sounds morbid, but often I go back to, you know what, you know, we're all only, on this earth for a short period of time. And does it really matter? Well, yes, it does, because I invest a lot of time into it. But you look at the bigger picture, and that, so you got to put perspective on things. I think the second thing is just actually looking after myself a little bit better. So I invested a lot of time on my own mental health routine. So even like this morning, it's a day off for the players, but I'm still in the office. But actually going down at sunrise and going to the beach. So I spent 10 minutes in the beach, then sauna and breathing, right? And then I'm ready for the day to start. On other days, it's about doing some exercise, so I'm in here at the gym at 6 a.m. because I feel better. Like, there's a lot of research around, dopamine and, I suppose, that sort of, the endorphins that you get through exercise, and breathing. And so, there's a bit of a saying, win the morning, win the day. So I've invested a lot into that. I've invested a lot into journaling, and not every day, because that sort of becomes a bit of a pain. But like for me, I sort of journal about 2 or 3 times a week, and it's not on any particular day. It's just when I feel like, there's and I journal like, essentially, one or two things I'm grateful for, what I've done to help somebody else. So I call that empathy. How I'm genuinely feeling. Like, so if I'm feeling shit, I'll write it down. I feel shit today. Like, it's been a tough day, or we didn't quite get the result that we wanted, and the media is sort of going hard at me. So I just need to make sure that I put it in perspective, and so just writing down some key things. So they're all things that I wish I had known when I was a younger person. When I was a player, I wish I had known this stuff. But even as a young coach, when I first started as a coach, I'm a much, much better coach now. I spend so much more time on trying to be a bit more creative and allow thinking time, and so I'm a bit more selfish with my schedule, with regards to blocking off time for that. But these are all things that you learn, right, as you get older. And yeah, and unfortunately, as much as you'd like to put your 50-year-old self into your 20-year-old self, life sort of helps you learn. But the things that I really invested in, and even like Garmin, like I've invested in a Garmin watch to track my sleep and my HRV overnight time and my resting heart rate and how many steps a day. Like all this stuff is about not just the players being elite performers, but I want to be an elite coach. I want to be an elite performer as a coach, and be my authentic self, and be me. Like if I try and copy being another coach, it'd be just a poor version of that. So all those things are things that I've tried to work out and mentally spend time on developing a really good routine to have a better week or a better day.
Yeah.
Wow.
Lead it through first, as they say.
Yeah.
Exactly. You got to
Well,
put on your
imagine,
own
yeah.
mask.
Well, one of the things I learned, like from a really tough experience, Rachel, which is probably you're alluding to, one of the head coaching roles went, it went really poorly for me individually and collectively for the club, and I stopped looking after myself. So then I wasn't the best version of myself when I come in, and I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't exercising, I was eating rubbish food, I was overworking, so I was overtired. No time for being creative, and you go into the environment and you just look and feel like shit, really. And so you're not your best version of yourself. So that was one of the learnings, going, right, like I can't outwork this. I've got to look after myself better first. And if I look after myself a bit better, then I'm going to be a better coach or a better leader or a better person, a partner at home. And so that's some of the learnings, right, that we wish to sort of knew, at the time.
That's amazing. I was just thinking to myself, I don't know that I've heard too many male leaders ever talk about their self-care practices. So it is really refreshing to hear you talk about that. And it actually was a nice
segue into the question that I really wanted to ask. And I think you've kind of been talking about elements of this, of what I think your response would be to this question throughout our entire conversation. But a lot of the way we show up in the workplace, the way we show up to our team, our neighbors, our friends, our family, and the decisions that we make, everything is all guided by our values. I strongly believe that our values are our compass for how we show up, how we interact, and what we focus our time on. So what would you say are your core values, and how have you used those values to guide your decisions and how you coach others?
Yeah, well, I've got four values that I try and display and act upon, and I've actually been really explicit this season in particular to the staff and the players, because I think if they understand what's important to me, they understand me a little bit better, right? So the
Right.
first one is reliability. So I want to be 7 or 8 out of 10 every day. So because I think if I come in and I'm either really, really grumpy or really, really happy, or really, really consistent one day and then inconsistent the next day with my actions, like the players don't know, or the staff don't know what version they're going to get of me. So reliability is really important. 7 or 8 out of 10. So as an example, whether we win or lose a game here in the NRL, which is big news in Australia, it's on the sports bulletins, the back pages of the papers and so on. Whether we win or lose, we have the same review structure every week. So the players know consistently this is what the review is going to look like. There's no shitty review when we lose and really happy over the top review when we win, right? So it's the same sort of review every week. So reliability is important. I mean, effort's important to me because I control that. Might not have the most talent or most skill in a particular area, but effort is guided by you, the things that you can control. The third thing is authenticity. So being me. If I try to come in and be or act like a couple of the head coaches, that I've worked under as an assistant coach, then I'm just a poor man's version of that, right? So I've got to be me. Like, what are my strengths? What are my areas, that I'm weak in, and how I'm going to grow them? And then the last one is be ultra curious, because I want to get better. And so they're the 4 values I live by. As a coach and as a person. And I think being explicit to the people that work with me and work underneath me, if you're looking at a hierarchical type approach to leadership, I think it's really important I share that. Just an aside to that, I think it's also important as a leader you show vulnerability. And one of the things we're doing in our environment at the moment to show that vulnerability and to get to know each other a bit better is we're doing what we call campfire chats. And our wellbeing and education manager is running the chats, essentially asking you 5 or 6 questions, and they're it's about some of your failures or some of your mistakes, etc. But I think as a leader, if you share that vulnerability with others, they get to know you better, and they know that you're human too, and that you've got. Like I'm not this perfect person who, walks through the door and I've got it all worked out every single day. And at times, I bet you we've all tried to do that. I've got all the answers, particularly when you're a leader. And so sharing my values with the group, and then sharing some vulnerabilities or challenges or mistakes I've made with the group, I feel like you can build that connection. I'm not perfect, but this is what I live by. These are my values, and these are, these are some things that I've had to go through.
Yeah, great. I mean, I think that's such a wonderful thing. I mean, I think vulnerability piece there is awesome as well, because as you say, like as a leader, you can either be labeled as somebody who should know the answers, or you label yourself as somebody who should know the answers. And that puts a lot of pressure on you. So vulnerability shows people that it is okay to not know the answers. It is okay to occasionally make a mistake, and sharing what that lesson is as well. It's like almost like teaching the kind of perspective of, well, I made a mistake, so what? All that is data and information to tell me what I don't or shouldn't or can't do again. And what's the lesson that I learned? How do I build on that so that I can not make that mistake again and do something better? So that really teaches people a different type of framework and approach. Is just on the values piece, is this something that you work with your team? Do you do a values exercise with them? Do you teach them like how to live by their values and know them?
Yeah, we do. So to answer your question, so I work with Andrew May on really digging down to what my values are, and then what's that look like on a daily basis or a weekly basis. And so it wasn't just something I woke up one morning going, right, these are my 4 values. It was a process, right? And so we've just been at a camp up in the Blue Mountains here in Australia, which is a beautiful part of Western Sydney, I suppose you'd call it. And one of the big pieces there was connection and how we build that connection. But the other big piece was, okay, what are we going to stand for as a team? How do we need to act? And what's that look like or feel like? And so we've really been digging down on what are our on-field values and what are our off-field values. And not just saying, because it's easy to put, something up on the wall. Our value is a connection, right? But what's it actually what's it look like on the field, or what's it look like off the field, right? So they're easy to say and they're much harder to do. But we're really digging down at the moment of what's the 1 or 2 behaviours that show connection on the field. What's the 1 or 2 behaviours that show connection off the field? Not just going connection and going, okay, it looks great on the wall, but we're not going to, live it every day or live it every week. And so that's one of the things that we're really digging down to at the moment. It's the pre-season here in Australia, and so we're about 6 weeks away from playing our first game. And so the last 2 weeks we've really invested time on coming up with values, and then not just going, right, we're done. It's 1 hour we've spent on that and we're into it. No, we're visiting that. Okay, so what's the behaviours attached to those values? Are they the right behaviours? So we're really digging down. That's one of the big pieces at the moment that we're doing. And I'm a lot fresher leading that because I'm not getting stuck in the X's and the O's. I'm using my assistant coaches, giving them responsibility to do a lot of the X's and O's stuff here at the moment, and I'm really trying to dig down on on the leadership and the cultural piece and the values and behaviours piece.
Wow, amazing. This has been a really eye-opening conversation for me. I feel like I've learned so much, and a lot of what you said and talked to really spoke to me in terms of values and also just my personal beliefs about leadership and how we show up in the workplace. But because I know coaching itself, there's just a ton of information. You can find information all over the internet, your library, your friends, your peers. But, what would you say are the most important tips? So say, for example, our listeners who are listening to this episode, what would you say are the most crucial tips when it comes to coaching someone? Do you have a framework or what have you?
Yeah, well, I think when it comes to coaching somebody else, I think you need to understand what's important to you to start with, right? So, those values. So actually, what's important to you, because that's the starting point of building a relationship with somebody else. If you're coaching someone, you've got to build rapport, you've got to build a respect, you've got to know that person. Otherwise, you can't coach them. You can tell them things, but how do you know they're going to take it on board, or how do you know they're going to retrieve it under pressure, whether it's a game or under pressure in the business world, when you've got to make decisions, and so on. So I think, you need to know yourself first and foremost. You need to understand the other person and what their motivation is. So, what's their purpose for doing this role? What's their purpose for playing, professional rugby here in Australia? Is it money? Is it family? Is it a status thing? Is it, so digging around, so knowing yourself, knowing the person you're coaching is really important. Sharing your expertise with that person, but then you need to check for understanding.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to give. I could give you a lot of information like I am now, but the next time, I talk to you, Rachel, as an example, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. What did you take away from that?
You always ask me this question.
Yeah. So, so it's important to check for understanding, and then you need to give feedback. Like, that feedback loop's really important. Like, how do you close that feedback loop? Because you can give people feedback, you can watch them perform, give them feedback, give them a couple of takeaways, watch them perform, give them feedback, give them, so it's that feedback loop. So they're all things that are really important, and we essentially do that loop, close that loop each and every single week of pre-season training, and each and every single week of in season when we're playing games. We essentially prepare and preview and then action it on the field, and then review it, and then we prepare, and then we preview, and so it's almost that weekly loop for us in our environment. But I think that's that can be done in the workplace. So it's really interesting when you talk to a lot of leaders in business, and I've done this a lot. my challenge to them is most organisations do once a year reviews or twice a year reviews, and a lot changes in 6 months, or a lot changes in 12 months. And so generally, how you're following up on that feedback, how you're really coaching the person. So I think more regular reviews in the business world would be really helpful. And as I said, we have we have weekly reviews. Here with players, with staff, so I think, people get better when they get feedback, and I give feedback to our players or our staff because we care.
Yeah, I think that's
Agree.
super important. You need to understand also like what drives people, because people are driven by different motivations. And so, what you feel might be important to understand and coach somebody on might not be something that is important to them. So really getting to know them and building that rapport helps you to go, oh, this person is driven by, spending time with their family. So we have to like work with them around how do we build in the way we talk to them around spending time with their family, because that's of an important value to them. So that's that's really important what you say there. Yeah, super cool. Well, Anthony, honestly, this has been such a fantastic and eye-opening episode. Thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge and information with us. I mean, there's probably a lot of things here that people have never known about you, and particularly love how you're sharing some of your self-care routines and how you're building that culture in the team. I think that's like really great to understand, especially from that context of sport where a lot of people see it as very masculine and like people don't do that type of thing, and obviously you're creating a different culture, so that's really great. If anyone is interested, anyone listening who's interested in connecting with you, maybe to chat about leadership or coaching or have you speak at their event, what's the best way for them to do that?
Probably on LinkedIn. So on LinkedIn or through Cove Agency, which is I'm managed by an agency there. So they're the two ways to do it. I'm not on many other social media platforms. I try and I'd be a little bit low key, Rachel, here in Australia. So but look, I am on LinkedIn. That's the only platform. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, are you happy for us to drop a link to your LinkedIn profile on the show notes?
That's fine. Yeah, that's
fine. Fabulous. Yeah, I understand. Obviously, you've got to protect your family and your identity, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yep, this has been amazing, Anthony. We can't thank you enough for this conversation and all that you shared, and just bringing yourself into the conversation. I really feel like I got a chance to know you as a person, so I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Thanks for chatting, ladies. It's been good to be on.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Leading Ladies Who Lunch podcast. If we can leave you with a thought, how are you going to change or maybe incorporate any new coaching tips or any tips you heard into your routine from this episode? If you liked the episode, we would be so grateful if you can share with your friends and tag us on social media at Leading Ladies Who Lunch. Your reviews of this podcast mean so much to us. We'd love it if you can rate it and subscribe to the show.
Remember, you can find us and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other podcast platforms. Subscribe to stay up to date with the latest episodes and follow us on Instagram at Leading Ladies Who Lunch.
Stay tuned for another great episode in 2 weeks.
Until then, stay sassy. Thank you for joining us on the empowering journey at the Leading Ladies Who Lunch podcast. We hope you've enjoyed our insightful discussions, actionable strategies, and inspiring stories that we break down during each episode. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to Leading Ladies Who Lunch on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. And remember, the conversations you've heard on this podcast are just the beginning of your journey. Let your voice be heard, inspire change, and continue breaking barriers as you lead with authenticity, resilience, and unwavering determination.
Until next time, keep embracing your leadership potential, challenging the norms, and shaping a better world for women in the workplace. Leading Ladies Who Lunch, empowering women, changing lives.